Hello there, welcome to my review of the Rockford Files Season 1, Episode 11, Caledonia, It's Worth a Fortune, written by Juanita Bartlett and directed by Stuart Margolin. The answer phone message in this episode may be referring back to the events of the previous episode.
It's Doc Jones. What'd you do to the hand, son? 3 fractured knuckles. You hit somebody?
Which is a nice little touch. The episode begins, however, with a woman visiting her husband in intensive care, as he whispers to her, Caledonia, California, worth a fortune. The woman is Jolene Hyland, played by Shelley Fabaret, and her husband Jerry, as well as being at death's door, is also incarcerated. As she leaves the prison, she's being watched by 2 goons, apparently also aware of the fortune. We then cut to her in Jim's car as they head out to Caledonia, California, only to be pulled over by the police. We then cut to the local sheriff who is having his photos taken for his re-election campaign.
How about one with you looking at the wanted poster?
Oh, no. No, you show people half your face, they figure you got something to hide. You shoot me straight on.
The photographer Gibb is played by Robert Ginty, who would go on to star in cult 80s exploitation film The Exterminator and its sequel. Rockford and Jolene are waiting to see the sheriff, wanting some information from him. And, unlike every other cop Jim meets, this sheriff is very forthcoming, or so it seems.
4 years ago, Gerald Highland came through here doing 70, 75 miles an hour. Right through the middle of town.
You arrested him for speeding?
Jim finds out that the sheriff is lying about originally arresting Jerry Highland for speeding, and was actually picked up for trespassing at a farm in town, which is probably where he hid the fortune. They go to explore, but the sheriff is there waiting for them and quickly scares them off.
You're on private property, mister.
It's a neat twist that the first seemingly helpful cop Jim meets is actually lying through his teeth and turns out to be just like every other cop in Rockford's orbit. And I like how they don't try to string out the pretense, although his motives are still kept from us. Is he just being a cop? Is it to do with his re-election, or is he looking for the fortune too? They leave, but Jolene is undeterred, wanting to go back. Jim is far more realistic though, and not only does he think they won't get back to the farm without the sheriff spotting them, but that they won't be able to find the fortune on the acres of land there, so leaves Jolene at her home. There she's startled by the appearance of Leonard Blair, an associate of Highland's, who got 2 years less than him for the same crime he was convicted of, and he's also a former lover of Jolene's. He's played by Richard Sharl, who might be as close as we get to a Columbo connection, as he was married to Valerie Harper, who appeared in The Most Crucial Game. But if you spot any other Columbo connections, please do let me know in the comments. Jolene and Blair go out to dinner together, and he attempts to patch things up, but is also trying to get the location of the fortune out of her.
Well, I mean, you must have said something.
Like what?
Oh, well, you know,
Like what, Len?
like where he buried $746,000 in rare stamps.
Apparently, Jerry Highland has given him the directions to the fortune in rare stamps, but not the location, which he gave to Jolene. Jolene goes to see Rockford again, unwilling to give Blair his 50% share he's demanding, and concerned that even if she does agree to it, he'll double-cross her. Jim eventually agrees to help her for a cut, but when they both go to Blair's motel, he's being carted off in an ambulance. Apparently he was set upon by the 2 thugs that we saw in the opening.
Is he hurt badly?
No. He just got beat up. The room is in worse shape than he is.
The way Jim gets this information from the grumpy motel manager is a great example of when this show is really working well. effectively conning the information out of the motel manager with a harmless ruse, and going to him in the first place because Jim knows he will be more free with the information than the cops, if dealt with in the correct way. Jim is therefore not only able to discover just what happened to Blair, but also how he wasn't attacked for his money, so it wasn't a random mugging, but others trying to get the directions out of him. This clever storytelling is seen further when Jim and Jolene go to see a recovered Blair, and Jim strikes a deal with him as a third partner.
There's three of us, we'll split it up three ways. We'll each take 33 1/3%.
That is the most...
That's the deal.
You're cutting yourself a pretty big piece of something that doesn't belong to you.
So are you.
Jim negotiates for a third of the fortune with Blair, which Jolene is initially angry about.
You just negotiated me down from 50% to 33 1/3.
No, I negotiated you up to 66 2/3, less my 5%.
He does this not just so she'll get more, but also because he knew that Blair would think the deal was crooked if he'd told the truth about his percentage. This perfectly demonstrates just how smart and savvy Jim is, and how he knows the psychology of the people he deals with. Jolene and Jim head to meet Blair, only to be followed by the two goons that assaulted Blair, leading to a car chase that Jim quickly manages to think his way out of, only to fall foul of a cop. During these scenes with Jim and Jolene, she paints a very bleak picture of her own self-esteem, and this seems to be something of a recurring pattern in Rockford. In amongst the various strong and determined female characters that permeate the show are these downtrodden women who think far less of themselves than they should. And in these cases, Jim is always ready to attempt to boost their ego.
Jerry's the one that broke the law, and Jerry's the one that's in jail. As far as I'm concerned, that makes Jerry a loser, not you.
By pointing out that the flaws they see in themselves are not an accurate reflection of who they are. It's incredibly refreshing to see in a show from the 70s attempt to craft these three-dimensional female characters with a story arc, and is probably partly down to the several female writers that were employed on the show. It's not all just love interest of the week. As the pair arrive at Blair's new motel, he is being kidnapped by the goons, and so Rockford follows them into the night as they take Blair to their hideout. Jim rescues Blair with relatively little difficulty, but not before he's given up the directions, which he claims were a lie.
Come on. You don't really think I told those guys the truth, do you? You mean about the courthouse take 2 giant steps? I made it up.
But Jim still checks them out anyway, and they were a lie. When he and Jolene get back to Blair, he agrees to play it straight, and they take him with them. But he was lying again, and has his own goon pick him up when they get to the town. Except this time, Jim was also lying about which town it was, and has taken him to the wrong town.
I figured you'd do something like this, so I deliberately drove into the wrong town. You know that little fruit stand back down the road?
Yeah.
Jolene and I wait for you there.
This distrustful cat-and-mouse game between them is really well done, and a lot of fun to watch them both try and succeed to out-con each other, before they eventually agree to actually working together. They eventually arrive back at the farm they began at, only to discover the fortune is no such thing. It's a note from Jerry Highland.
By now, you two hate each other, and that is worth a fortune to me, Jerry.
Explaining he knew about Blair and Jolene's affair, and could think of no better revenge than sending them on this wild goose chase, which he knew would result in them hating each other by the end of it. This reveal is somewhat bittersweet, as we have discovered over the course of the episode that Jolene had long lost any feelings she had for Blair and was planning on using the money to get her husband an expensive lawyer and an expensive doctor.
I got a really good lawyer for Jerry. Did I tell you that?
No.
As soon as we get the money, I'll pay him a retainer, and he's going to start to work right away.
And I think I prefer this to what might have been a less sympathetic story if she and Blair had begun with unrequited feelings for each other. It's not quite over yet, though, as the sheriff arrives and reveals he has spent 4 years looking for the fortune that never existed. He's none too happy, and the episode ends with him arresting the trio.
You're under arrest. You're all under arrest.
Why?
Unlawful entry.
There's a lot of fun to be had in this treasure hunt episode, but with it also comes the character growth I mentioned earlier, and some fun twists and turns. It does feel like it's not really a Rockford episode though, and might have actually worked better as a standalone TV movie about Jolene and Blair. But having said that, Rockford doesn't ever feel out of place in the adventure. It's another different turn of pace for the show and demonstrates just how versatile the format of the Rockford Files is, and is an easy 4 out of 5 for me. Thank you. Goodbye.